Hi, beautiful people. Welcome back if you're joining me again. If you're new to this, my name's Linny Nichols, and I think we're on video 6 of a little holistic healing video series. So up until now, we've covered the emotional body and the spiritual body. Today we're going to take a bit of a deeper look into the physical body and how dis-ease manifests into the physical body. So apologies for being a little bit late with this one, but I've been really trying to focus on getting the final stages of the book organized, which we're now just converting the print version into an EPUB for ebooks, and then it'll be off to the printer. So if there's no hold-ups there, I'm hoping just another couple of weeks, or a few weeks at the max. I think they take a little bit to print. So, and then you'll have all of these resources together in the one book. So it's pretty exciting, but I'm not really going to believe it until I see it. It's 5 years in the making, this book. So anyways, I hope that the information up until now has been valuable and informative, and that you've been able to put into practice, or even possibly just open your mind a little bit to the possibility of this new way of thinking, which I know is not easy when we've been indoctrinated and believed a certain thing all of our life, and that is mainly just to focus on the physical body. But as I've mentioned time and time again through here and shown you testimonials, that when we focus on the actual cause, which goes back to that chaos at the atomic level, that manifests into the energy centers and then the organs that correlate with those centers, then we're actually really getting to be able to create true healing rather than just suppressing the symptoms. So yeah, I hope that it's all kind of coming together and you can see how it works holistically, that we're not just this physical body. So I thought we'd just quickly go over a few of the facts that we've learnt and see where we're at now before we move into the physical body. So we know that everything in the cosmos is energy, including us and including the source of that which we came from, which many people call God. And anciently it was understood that we are that, the same as that which we came from. And they believed us to be godlings, and we come into this physical body to do living temple work, which, remember, the body is the home or the abode of the godling, goddess or godling. And so they understood that it was only things of the highest vibration that would be allowed to enter that temple. Just like if you go to a physical temple, you don't go in there with dirty clothes and, cow poo on your feet or whatever. And yet, we haven't been taught that way. So we for many people, our body's kind of more like a rubbish bin than a temple. So we understand now that only things of the highest vibration should be allowed to enter that temple. And we understand that everything is energy, and within this living temple we have 7 major energy centers, and these energy centers correlate with a particular color. They also actually correlate with a particular musical note. To everything kind of is connected by the number 7. They also correlate to certain organs and body parts. And so what happens is that we have this emotional toxicity in the way of negative core beliefs, negative thoughts or emotions that get trapped in the body, and then create these blockages in the energy centers. And then over time, if we don't take notice of the emotional signs that our body's giving us, so we might have a very strong emotion, but we've been taught to just push that down and ignore it. And so over time, then the body tries to show us a different way, and it might just give us a little ache and pain. But of course, we've been taught to go and get something to suppress that ache and pain. And then over time, if it's, a really strong degenerative cellular memory, or very negative belief or something like that, then it could manifest into something more serious And so it's really imperative that we take a holistic approach to healing. And this is where, you know, we've been taught so wrongly. We only know the one thing, and that is to, you know, use something outside of ourselves to take it, and then little did we know that that's just suppressing the symptom. It's not actually getting to the cause, because the cause is something deeper. And anciently it was understood that the word symptom meant something deeper, a sign of something deeper. So yeah, when we can understand this and really start to look at things holistically, rather than just, oh shivers, I've got a pain, I better go and get something, or I've got a really sore neck, I'm going to the chiropractor, which is brilliant, by the way, because that's releasing any blockages in the energy flow and any nerves that are suppressing that flow of energy. So I have a really strong belief in chiropractics and things like that, and anciently they did also. But instead of just focusing on that, then they knew to look deeper, and we, you know, once we kind of get a real awareness of this and bring it into our daily life, then we start to look deeper also. I was talking to my sister yesterday, or whenever it was, and she was saying, yeah, it's really weird for her that people would just run off and do that, because for a long time she's had this understanding that, yeah, when there's something going on in the body, what is it that's creating that? What's the psychosomatic to that? So I said to her, when she was talking about a thyroid, I said, what are you still holding on to around, you know, what about me? When's it going to be my turn? Because this is the psychosomatic for thyroid. And she said, yeah, I don't know. But then something came to her, and it took her right back to when we were children. And so she could really see how she had no idea she even had that memory, but she could see that that was a real kind of trigger to this, or, you know, maybe even the cause of her creating that belief that, you know, I'm always, you know, I'm never first, I'm always, when's it going to be my turn? I'm, you know, can't even think what we decided the belief was, but it was definitely around that well-known psychosomatic reason for thyroid issues. So yeah, and when we start to approach life like this, it makes things really interesting and kind of exciting, because instead of looking to suppress the symptom, we're actually embracing our body and its wisdom. And so you might just kick your little toe, and you might, you know, up until now think, oh, well, I kicked my little toe. But in actual fact, there's a psychosomatic for everything that takes place in our body. And it's really interesting when you start to study this and get into this a little bit more. So yeah, so that brings us up to where we're at today. And, you know, because we haven't been doing those things, over time, the causes have manifested into the physical body. And for all of us, we have aches and pains, you know, from one time to another, or possibly consistently. You know, many people have disease. There was that prediction that one in 2 people, 50% of people would be diagnosed with cancer in their lifetime. And that was the catalyst for me creating or writing my first book, because I was just like, this is ridiculous. You know, there is still countries around the world that are disease free. They live as nature intended. So I guess that's that's what inspired me to continue and work together with Don to create this second book and try to educate people on the ancient wisdom and how we can truly be, you know, be our own healers, be our own doctors. And, you know, this is very, very possible and absolutely probable that we're going to heal ourselves if we take this holistic approach. So yeah, so now we're going to move into the physical body and see how these blocked centers and blocked emotions manifest into physical dis-ease. Okay, so again, let's come back to the fact that we are this godling in this vehicle, which they knew to be the home or abode of the godling, and they called that a living temple. In fact, they used to draw it just like, you know when a child draws their first house. Well, anciently, that was just a symbol a symbolic way of drawing our body temples. So they had the, that like a child would draw the square down the bottom. Well, that meant air, fire, earth, and water. And then with the triangle on the top, that was limbs, joints, and torso. And so, yeah, they knew that to be the ancient alchemy. So when you put those, you focus on air, fire, earth, and water as the principles of health. And then they also brought in exercise, healthy relationships and passion. And they were the 7 principles of health that they knew was the alchemy to living a long, dis-ease-free life and staying healthy and vibrant. So yeah, it was all about our body, our living temple, and the sacredness of that. They understood to be disease-free that we should eat a raw food diet or raw food diet. And initially that's how raw was spelled R-A. And it basically meant plant foods that are ripened and enlivened by the sun. But it also incorporated honey from the bees and also the raw and fermented milks of all the beasts on the earth that actually eat the grasses and convert that grass into the milk of life, by converting it into all these nutrients that were then, healthy and healing for us to ingest in the human body. But unfortunately, over time, then, what we think of as milk now is so far from raw milk and healthy healing milk and cheeses and stuff like that. I mean, you can still get them, but it's, most often they're labeled not for human consumption because of just the way things are. Our ancestors understood that everything that we needed to survive and absolutely thrive was provided for us in nature. The beautiful whole foods. And even when it came to, protecting ourselves from all this stuff that's going on at the moment and the V word, they knew that it was berries that would do that. And so every spring when the berries came forth, they would absolutely pig out on berries. And that would keep them immunized until those berries came forth again 1 year later. So they just understood, they had this connection to the earth and they understood this ancient alchemy, and so they didn't feel the need to look outside of themselves or nature. They just knew that everything was provided. So there was also something called nature's doctrine of signatures, and they understood, it was passed down generationally, this wisdom that every plant and whole food has a geometric pattern that correlates to the geometric presentation of an organ or body part, and that these foods were literally medicine to that body part. They knew that when there was dis-ease in a particular organ, they would just start to eat those foods, and they would use the certain herbs that had that same vibrational frequency in order to heal themselves and heal their body. So they understood there was these 7 principles of health, and next week we'll talk more about that. And they were air. So, we are electrical beings, and so we need our air to be electrified. It needs to be moving, not stale and stagnant. Water, we need a certain amount of water, fresh water every day to replenish the hydronium fluid in the brain. Earth, we need to eat these whole foods, and as I said, the raw way of, or raw back then, way of eating was to be able to eat anything that came forth from the earth in that way, and to not cook it too much. The ancient wisdom was that once we cook and freeze our foods, it was like a farmer trying to plant seeds that had been cooked and frozen, and then the next season, wondering why nothing germinated. And yet the farmer that had put these beautiful uncooked seeds into the earth then would reap the rewards of that. And it was understood that that was the same for our body temples. And in order to stay vibrant and thrive, then the raw or raw food diet was the way to go. And they understood that we could cook our foods, but for them it was never to use anything hotter than the midday sun. So, you know, for most of us, you know, and certain ways of thinking, everything should be cooked. But that was just the ancient wisdom, which is one way of thinking. I know for my body it works. You know, I thrive on the more raw foods than too much cooked, but I also love a little bit of cooked as well. So what else was there? As I think I mentioned in one of the videos, they understood that there was the plants that grew under the ground, the plants that grew on the ground, and the plants that grew highest in the trees. And that the plants under the ground, they actually were supportive and healing to all of the organs and body parts from the navel down, which they knew as the basement of the living temple. And all of the foods that grew on the ground, they were supportive and healing to all of the organs and body parts from the navel up to the throat. And then they knew that as the main floor of the body temple. And then there were the upper rooms, and all of the foods that grew highest in the trees and above the ground, they were supportive and healing to all of those parts of the body from the throat up to the crown of the head. And they understood these to be the most sacred to the human, to the living temple or the human body. And, you know, so as I've said in, I think it was the first video, how unfortunate it is that we've been indoctrinated to be so frightened of fruits and nuts, and yet anciently it was understood that these were the most sacred to the human body. So if we can start to let go of that past indoctrination and just start to embrace this, you know, this ancient wisdom, then our bodies are going to begin to heal and thrive. They also understood that, you know, we spend so much time cleaning the outside of our body, but in fact it's the inside of the body that really is in you know, deeper need of cleansing. And I always liken it to, you know, when you see a drain and it gets all that greasy, disgusting, gross muck in it. Well, I always feel like our colons get like that. And, you know, they understood that when we didn't cleanse the body internally, the body would create something called plaque. And it was like a black sticky tar. And this tar-like stuff lines the digestive tract and the colon. And I have read testimonials that where over time this plaque has become so thick and hard that when people have released it from the body using herbs and bentonite clays and fasting, they've tried to cut it and study it with, or tried to study it and cut it with a serrated knife. And one man's testimonial said he couldn't even cut it with a serrated knife, which is really, really, I mean, you imagine that in your body. And the other thing they understood was that the colon is a bit like the feet. So it has reflexology points on the feet, or like we have that on our feet, but also with the colon. And so if you have this really thick coating of plaque or like this tar-like stuff, which is just unprocessed proteins and residues of medications and drugs and all sorts of things that shouldn't be stored in the body, you know, medical drugs as well, then that part of the body that correlates with that reflexology point, it just makes sense that that wouldn't be able to work optimally. So they understood this, and by watching nature, they saw that the ibis bird would eat every day. It would eat its food, and then as soon as it finished, it would walk out into the water and it would fill its beak with water from the river. And it would actually turn its head, because its head would swivel right the way around, and it would turn its head around, stick its beak up its butt, oh my gosh, butt, and squirt the contents of all this water into the colon and then release it all. And then so through watching that and learning from nature, they invented like what we know today as like the enema bag. And they made this out of like, you know, some sort of bark, and then a hollow reed thing as the tube. And yeah, that's how the enema supposedly came about. which is just such a brilliant, brilliant wisdom to be cleansing the colon, because it really is, that's our rubbish bin when you think of everything that goes into our bodies, and that's where it ends up. And so if people their digestions aren't working properly and they're not releasing properly, the colon's not working properly, or the bowel, then you can imagine how filthy the inside of the body is. And I think it's been said that over 75% of dis-ease begins in the colon and the digestive system. So yeah, it's really imperative that we take that on board and start to look after our internal bodies, and not just cleansing the outside, which really, most often for most of us doesn't really get dirty at all. So yeah, anciently they understood this, and so they had their principles of health, 7 principles of health, and then the colon cleansing. They also understood that there was a faster and fastest way to heal the physical body, and that was through raw foods. And then a step up from that, the faster way was juice fasting, and then fastest way was to water fast. And as I mentioned in one of the other videos, this is partly because there's every single vibration of the color spectrum in water. And so we know now how these vibrations of colors are healing to not just the body organs, but the energy centers, and everything's working together. And so yeah, they understood this, and so they would practice fasting regularly. And even there was something called walking the rainbow bridge, where that for 7 days they would eat, so for one full day they would eat and juice just red foods, then another day orange foods, and the next day yellow foods, going through the whole color spectrum. And then that was there was a longer one as well that I think they would do 1 week on each color, and this was called walking the rainbow bridge. And at the end of that rainbow was your body was the pot of gold. So yeah, this is just some of the fascinating wisdom that has been kind of taken from us. And thank goodness for Don and his 40+ year search for truest truths. He's been bringing this back and teaching this for the last, 40, 50 years of his life. If anyone's seen him, you would have heard some of that stuff. But this is what we're also bringing back in our book, which is, for me, it's so exciting because I just love all this, the ancient wisdom that we have not been privy to. So yeah, this was the physical body, and this is how they would approach it. They would understand that, there's only 7 major body systems, so that to them there was only 7 dis-eases. And when something had manifested from the chakra, the energy center, so we've got the blocked emotion, it's manifested into the blocked energy center or imbalanced energy center. And then of course, when that's not looked at, has affected those organs correlating to that particular energy center where it's been stuck. And if you remember last week, or when the last video was, I talked about the purpose of each chakra. And so if you have an experience that's around fear, fight or flight, then most likely that would be stored in the root chakra, which the purpose of the root chakra was survival and instincts. So this is where things get stuck in the body, and then so those organs then that were correlating with the root chakra, such as the kidneys, the adrenals, the colon, the legs, the feet, those organs would be the ones that would be most likely to end up in a state of dis-ease if the cause was not looked at. So yeah, I hope that's kind of making sense to you now, and you're getting an understanding of how it all kind of comes together like that, and how and where things manifest into the physical body. So yeah, that's just the basics of how it all comes about and the ancient wisdom when it came to the physical body. And next week I'm going to go into a little bit more detail of each of the principles of health, and a bit more on fasting, a bit more on colon cleansing, and then that'll kind of get us through the holistic approach to healing. and everything that we've covered in the book. And then we'll do one final video just as a bit of a summary, and then crossing fingers, touching wood, that maybe our book will be ready to come forth into the world by then. But as I've said before, you know, all in divine timing in my life. So we're doing the best we can to get it as soon as we can. We're ready to upload it to the printer, but you know, from here I have no idea how long it's going to take. Hopefully not too long. And yeah, then all of this information plus much more you'll be able to have in one amazing resource. And I'll talk a little bit more about the book in our final video, so, and show you a couple of pages out of that, so you can get a feel for whether that resonates with you, whether it's something that you'd love to have as a resource, or you know, if it doesn't resonate at all. So yeah, so I'm going to leave you with that, and I thank you again for joining me, and love to hear any comments of, you know, how you found the little series so far. And yeah, if it's been valuable, love to hear, and always love to hear your testimonials of having a go and what you've kind of found and discovered and even achieved. So yeah, so have a beautiful week, everyone, and I will be back with you again in another week, or hopefully even less than this time. All right, see you.